let's put on some music and then we'll start to practice. I encourage you to grab 2 blocks. We're going to open up the legs to warm the hips, placing those blocks underneath with a supported position. We want to sit towards the front of the tailbone. And then you can choose either to make this a little harder by bringing it out or here, but we do want to be able to focus on our breath. Let's roll those shoulders and then release them down. Just put the hands in a way that's comfortable. If the palms are up, it's going to encourage us to be a little more open at the chest rather than that closed off stance that we have over our phone. So that's pretty nice to do. But let's inhale and exhale. And we can start to feel that breath down the back of the throat. This is a kind of breath that sometimes is called Darth Vader breath because there's this, so you audibly should be able to hear yourself. Maybe the person next to you wouldn't be able to hear you, but let's inhale and exhale in a way that we can feel just slightly down the back of the throat to activate our vagus nerve. I'm going to talk from Psalm 23, and if this isn't comfortable for you, you can just come to Crisscross Applesauce. That's an option for you too. Psalm 23, David writes, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." And water, I think, is a really incredible creation of God. It can cool us off on a hot summer day, but yet we can also install water heat and heat our homes with it. We can sail on top of it, we can snorkel through it, we can drink it to quench our thirst, or we can fill up the tub after a long, hard day and find some relaxation. It can just change our mood. You probably have some memories with still waters. I know that I do. And David is very specifically talking about still water here. I remember back when I was in college, sometimes it was difficult to study in the dorm with all of the activity that would go on. And if I had a big test, I would grab a blanket and my books and I would head out to this special place that I had found that was kind of deserted, and it was by still waters. And then I was able to think and to focus and to study like I needed to. Later on, the most notable time I can think of still waters is when I was 40 years old, I was diagnosed with cancer. I was in chemotherapy treatments and it made my head really muddy. It was like having this radio that was never set to a station, that was always on static. And it didn't just affect me physically, it affected me spiritually. Because when I would go to do my morning time of prayer and study, I was used to having this feeling of awe sometimes that would come, or these beatings of my heart where I would feel sensitive to something that I needed to do, or a conviction. But at this time, I just couldn't hear or feel anything. People would come up to me a lot. It happened many times where someone would come up to me and say, "I don't envy that you have cancer, but I do envy the closeness that you're probably feeling with God right now." And it just wasn't true. He felt silent. He felt so far away. And I longed for that closeness that I used to feel before I was in chemotherapy. So I developed a plan. Every day I would hop in the car and I would drive out to our nearby lake, Silver Lake. Now, I didn't have any hair. I was bald, as chemotherapy patients are, and the sun would burn me very easily. So I didn't even get out of the car. I would sit in the car with my Bible, praying and hanging on to that verse, James 4:8, "Draw near to God and he will draw near to you." As I sat in front of the still waters, just hoping to feel his presence so badly. And this went on day after day after day after week, and midsummer came. And we wanted things to be very normal for our 2 children. And so we took our regular annual summer camping trip up north. And I sat in the shade so that I wouldn't be burned by the sun watching them play. And this woman who I didn't know came up, plopped on my blanket, and very matter-of-factly said, "So you've got cancer. God wouldn't do that to you unless he wanted to teach you something. What have you learned?" It was frustrating because I didn't know. I wasn't hearing from God at all. He felt so silent. So I went back to my cabin and I prayed like I had never prayed before. And finally, God showed up in that moment of stillness and earnest prayer. And I learned a few things during that time. I learned that if I had never gone through this time where I had to pursue him so hard, I wouldn't have grown the way I did during that time and really learned to appreciate those times of awe that he brings, to really appreciate the presence, feeling that he's here with us. I also learned how important it is to know your scripture and to be in the Word and studying it. Because if I had never known that verse, James 4:8, draw near to God and he will draw near to you, or known scriptures that says that God is with us, then I would have really doubted his presence. But all through that time, as I drove to the still waters day after day, I knew he was there. Even if I couldn't see him, even if I couldn't feel him, I knew he was there because I knew that the Bible told me that he is. And that brought me encouragement in a very difficult time. I also learned to be thankful for everything, even cancer. Up until that time, I had this idea that, we all die. I'm going to die, you're going to die. But I wanted it to be through this really quick and easy method. I wanted it to be this sudden heart attack or a car accident that takes me instantly. Never really thinking about how painful that would be to my family if they got a phone call out of the blue that I had died. Cancer can be a blessing because when we die from cancer, our kids and our husband, they watch our journey and they're ready to let us go. And we get this opportunity to say goodbye. I learned to be thankful for that opportunity, that might be how I go, and that's okay if God wills it. Maybe you've got your own moments that you need some stillness. Maybe you don't have water near you. Today is a time where we can be still. I usually spend a lot of time in our sessions, or try to, explaining to you the benefits of the pose that you're in scientifically. But I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to get us into the pose, try to get us in safely, and then I want us to enjoy these times of stillness. Just be refreshed in the presence of God as we practice. We're going to drop the head towards the left shoulder, feeling a lengthening of the neck down the right side. Feeling a nice release as we continue to breathe deeply. I'm bringing the head back to center, dropping the head towards that right shoulder, lengthening down the left. Coming back center. Then we can draw that spine behind us into a seated cat. And then draw that stomach and the heart forward with the gaze high, alternating a seated cow with a seated cat. Breathing, noticing that space that we create in the front and the back of the spine as we do this spinal warm-up. Really trying to feel this openness all the way from the top to the bottom of the spine. And now we can circle our hands up, inhaling as we reach up over the shoulder with the right, and then releasing back down, inhaling up with the left, releasing back down. Inhaling, we reach, exhaling, we release. Getting some lateral flexion, which just means that we're creating space down the side of the spine. And now we're going to take that right hand, dropping it towards the mat on the right, reaching with the left, lengthening a little bit deeper as we reach more towards the corner of the room rather than over the shoulder. Maybe kicking the ribcage out a little bit. And we can drop back down, doing this on the opposite side, reaching upward and towards the corner of the room with that right arm. Noticing on that inhale that we get a little more space created between those vertebrae. And we can release that. Take those arms back overhead. We're going to get some rotation. Inhaling up, rotating behind us, taking a gaze towards the back of the room. Our hips are probably pretty anchored with this seated position, but we do want to think about keeping those hips forward as we initiate this rotation from the belly button. Inhaling and exhaling, moving at the pace of our breath. And the next time that we meet, we can come hands to heart center. Let's take those hands down to the mat, coming however is easiest to a standing position, bringing those feet underneath of the hips, slowly rolling up vertebrae by vertebrae. Let's inhale up, Exhaling, we circle into chair. Coming into our first time of prayer today, coming into a time of gratitude and thankfulness. Breathing in prayer. And we can stand, bringing our arms overhead, circling down, stepping back with that right foot, lifting into lunge. Moving into sun salutations, we'll drop our hands back to the mat, pushing back to down dog. Tailbone floats towards the ceiling, heels towards the mat. Then we'll come forward to plank, or if you'd like, we can drop to the knee for a modified plank. Coming down, no lower than the elbows for crocodile or modified crocodile, your choice. Dropping the belly towards the mat, taking our hands back towards the bottom of the rib cage, lifting up into up dog, curling the toes under, and coming back to down dog. Taking that right foot, drawing it forward, coming into lunge, arms overhead, bringing our hands back into the mat for forward fold. Inhaling up, exhaling chair, sinking those hips back, strength of the legs, circling up, and coming down to forward fold, stepping back with that left foot, coming into lunge. Hands return to the mat as we shift back to down dog. Tailbone high, coming forward to plank or to modified plank. Dropping down to either crocodile or modified crocodile, bringing the belly all the way down, taking the hands to the bottom of the rib cage, lifting to up dog, pushing back to down dog. Taking our left foot forward, lifting into lunge. Returning our hands to the mat, stepping forward. Inhaling up, exhaling chair. Circling up, we're going to go one time through again on the right, stepping that right foot back, coming back up to lunge, returning our hands to the mat and pushing back to down dog. Coming forward to plank or modified plank, crocodile or modified crocodile, belly all the way to the mat, hands to the bottom of the rib cage, lifting for up dog, pushing back to down dog. Right foot forward, coming into lunge. Returning our hands to the mat for forward fold. Inhaling up, exhaling chair. Circling again, forward fold. Stepping back this time with the left foot, lifting into lunge. Returning our hands to the mat as we move back into down dog. Shifting forward to plank or modified plank, coming down to crocodile or modified crocodile, all the way down, hands to the bottom of the rib cage, lifting for up dog, pushing back to down dog. Let's drop down into our first child's pose. Knees nice and wide, head towards the mat, taking time for adoration here. A prayer to our shepherd, thanking him for who he is, praising him. And we can take our hands to the right, drawing that left foot up, coming into a nice low lunge here. We want to feel a good stretch of the hip flexor behind us. We're going to take that right arm up, bringing it behind us, giving a little press back to get a good stretch of the triceps here. Really opening up that hip flexor, pressing that front foot into the mat. Breathing and using this time of stillness that we start to move into as we hold our poses a little bit longer. We can release the hands to the mat, straightening out that front leg, Keeping the ankle in line with the hip as we move into half monkey. Feeling a good hamstring stretch here as we draw the toes towards us. Breathing. We can bring that front foot to be flat on the mat, tucking the rear toes, lifting into a standing lunge, drawing our arms overhead to steeple hands, coming into a little back bend here. Nice bend in that front leg. If this bothers our shoulders, we can come down to cactus hands. Turning our right foot, we're going to open up to the side of the mat. You can pause here, taking time for a prayer of supplication, any of those requests that are on our hearts. And then we're going to reach up, giving a little twist for the wrists, and then shifting into warrior two. We should have a nice wide width between the feet here. It's going to help us a little later on for sure, but a good bend in this knee. Breathing. Flipping our hand to an upward position, we lean in, coming into exalted warrior. Noticing the strength of the legs as we press evenly on both feet. And let's cartwheel those arms, drawing the right arm overhead. Once we're set here in side angle, we're going to add a bind. So we're going to take that top hand behind us, kind of peek it between the legs if you're able, releasing our bottom arm, and see how close we can draw those fingertips to each other. Maybe you're actually able to even find the other hand. If not, that's okay. Just come as close as you can. Gaze is high, bound angle. And we can release this, coming back towards the front of our mat, shifting back into lunge, taking our hands to heart center, lifting the elbows, and coming into a rotation. Our hands can meet the mat. Let's step up with that right foot, lifting our hands behind us into airplane, creating a line that's parallel to the mat with the torso the best we can. Palms flipped up, arms close to the body to engage the triceps. Breathing. Noticing if the right side and the left side feel any different. And dropping those hands down, bringing that left leg back nice and far, coming back into that low lunge, taking our left hand, bringing it overhead, dropping it behind the neck, and giving a press backward for that tricep stretch in our low lunge, feeling a good stretch of the rear hip flexor. And we can release the hands, straightening that front leg, coming into half monkey. Keeping our ankle in line with the hip, drawing those toes towards the abdominals. Feeling a release of the hamstrings. And let's draw that foot back down to the mat, tucking the rear toes, lifting into a standing lunge, taking our arms overhead, steeple hands if we're able. Coming into a little back bend here, pressing that front foot into the mat, reaching upward. Taking advantage of these times of stillness and quiet. Turning that rear foot, coming towards that long edge of the mat. Once more for a time of prayer. Taking time for a prayer of confession, searching our hearts. Shoulders down, away from the ears. Now we can straighten that leg, reaching up both hands towards the corners of the room, and then settling down into Warrior Two. Gaze over the middle finger, shoulders down, away from the ears. Breathing a good bend in that right leg, knee pointing towards the second toe. And we can flip that hand up, leaning in, coming into Exalted Warrior, reaching and feeling that space down the side of the spine. And cartwheeling into side angle. Taking a breath as we prepare ourselves for now what we know we're about to try to do with that bound side angle. We can take that rear hand, dropping it behind us, letting it kind of peek between those legs. Taking our front hand, if we're able, finding the fingers, creating that bind. If we're not, being okay with that. And just seeing how close we can draw those hands towards each other. Gaze is high, breathing. And we can release those hands. We'll just kind of walk them towards the front of the mat, Coming back into a standing lunge. Finding the strength of the legs, hands back to heart center, rotating. Breathing. Settling into the stillness. We can take our hands back to the mat, stepping that left foot up, slowly rolling up vertebrae by vertebrae as we move into a time of balance with eagle. We're going to stabilize on that left foot, drawing up the right knee, then crossing it kind of like we're sitting ladylike, sitting the hips back. Trying to see if we can create a vertical line with those legs. Since the right leg is on top, we're going to take our left arm in front of us, slipping the right underneath. If we find any pain in this, we bring the hands back to heart center, or if we'd like to advance and get a little bit more of a stretch to the supraspinatus, we can lift. Using a focal point. And we can release, stepping it out, finding a place that feels nice and solid for our right foot, lifting the left knee, crossing it over, sitting the hips back. Since that left leg is on top, we take our right arm in front of us, slipping the left underneath, once again releasing it if there's pain, or lifting if we'd like to advance, breathing. And we can release. Let's inhale up, exhaling forward fold, dropping our knees down towards the mat, coming into a seated position with both legs extended out in front of us, into staff, drawing the feet towards us, inhaling up, and then drawing the stomach towards the abdominals as we hinge at the hips, but not drawing the head down. Keeping the head as an extension of the spine. The only time we want to drop our head all the way to the legs is if we're able to get not only the belly down, but the chest, and then follow that with the head. Feeling a good release in the hamstrings here. And we can ease up. We're going to draw those knees up, coming into a bound boat. So we're sitting to the front of the tailbone, taking 2 fingers, finding the big toe of the right, 2 fingers, finding the big toe of the left. And it's okay to have a bend in the knee here. We're just finding our place between easy and hard as we extend those legs out. We always have options if this feels difficult. We can just grab a little ab work here with the heels down, coming back to that place where we feel the abdominals engage. Your choice, boat or bound boat. There's definitely some balance involved if we're in bound boat. And if we are in bound boat, let's move into happy baby by just opening those legs. If we're not in bound boat or happy baby, let's keep working those abdominals, holding that pose without holding the breath, breathing. And we can all meet in cobbler, drawing those feet against each other, sitting again to the tailbone, drawing our knees down towards the mat, hinging forward. And we can come back up. Let's open up to an open leg seated straddle, drawing our toes towards us. We're nice and wide. We're welcome to use a block here as we walk ourselves down. Finding that place between easy and hard. Every exhale is an opportunity to deepen the pose. And we can release. We're going to grab 2 blocks as we start to move into a time of restorative yoga. We'll start with fish pose. Open up the chest, get some nice extension. We use 1 block as a pillow, the other to run along the spine, either tall or short. Short if we've never done fish before. We need a bent knee. We're going to back up, centering the spine with that first block, making sure that the head finds the support of that second block. Allowing the arms to just rest down, opening the chest. If we'd like to advance, we can extend the legs and then we let go, allowing the blocks to do all the work. This last weekend, I found myself needing some still waters. It was a really exciting weekend because my husband had a worship conference he'd been asked to, and I was invited to tag along, which meant I could go to a Charity Gale concert, actually twice, because she did chapel that morning. And the conference happened to be in the town where my son goes to school, so I could have lunch with him and his friends and do a game night, and it was also in the area that my daughter's a teacher who is engaged, so it made it a great weekend to also invite all kinds of family out and shop for a wedding dress and take her for sushi and tour the reception hall and try to fit all of this, plus working on my meditation and some work, within 48 hours. And suddenly I got in the car and I was just overwhelmed with everything that was going on. I had overpacked my schedule for sure, leaving no room for rest. And as I needed some still waters, I was trying to create a meditation on still waters and just thought, I can't work on still waters. I need them right now. There wasn't any water in sight, but I think the really important part of this verse is the stillness. And so I shut off the radio and I drove in stillness and quiet. And God refreshed me. So maybe you're not near water and nowhere near it. We can still find these moments of stillness and rest that God calls us to. I hope that you'll try to do that this week, maybe in this moment now. Now we can put a bend in the legs, drawing the arms closer to the body, lifting the head, gently working ourselves up. Removing the blocks. We're going to keep 1 block so that we can do a restorative bridge. But first, let's just lie down, drawing those knees towards the chest, rocking it out, finding neutral with the back. And then taking our block, lifting the hips, placing it at the sacrum, finding that place with the legs that we don't have to try, that we can just let go the most and breathe. And you can push off, releasing that block, setting it aside, drawing the knees towards the chest once more, Then returning the right foot to the mat, crossing the left over, keeping a bent foot here to protect the tissues of the knee. And then if it's comfortable, we can draw that towards us, coming deeper into this pigeon. Maybe taking foot into the hand or to the crook of the elbow, or maybe choosing to let it stay rested on that leg. Wherever we are in the pose, but making sure that we feel this only in the hip, not in the knee. Every exhale is an opportunity to deepen the pose. And we can release that. Let's switch to the other side, crossing the left over the right. Maybe choosing to draw that towards us into the hand or to the crook of the elbow. Finding space in that ball and socket of the hip. Breathing deeply. And we can release, moving into what feels comfortable for our final relaxation. Maybe taking our heels towards the corners of the mat. Maybe placing some blocks or a pillow underneath of the knees. Resting the arms at the sides, taking a purposeful breath, and then allowing our breath to just become easy, nothing forced. Legs heavy. And easiness in the right leg, and easiness in the left. I'd like to read a blog post that I found from a place in Indiana called Grace Church by Hannah Stapleton. She says this: "So often, friends, I find myself so tired. This world sucks the life out of me, and I rarely feel like I have enough energy to conquer whatever faces me each day. I consume vats of coffee, go to bed early, and read in quiet spaces to muster the strength I need for another day. But especially lately, nothing seems to be working. It doesn't matter if I take a vacation day or read uninterrupted for hours. I try to be good about making sure I have time for rest, but lately it's just not working. I'm drained all the time. It's like only putting enough gas in your car to have about a quarter of a tank and never filling up all the way. I'm running on empty, not able to give enough to the people that I love. Desperate for still waters. I would love some green pastures and a gentle brook and some soul restoration." Hannah found that in Hebrew, still waters is my menakot, which literally translates to restful waters. These waters are more than just still. They're actually just gently trickling, still and restful in comparison to the raging and dangerous floodwaters, waters that could kill a shepherd's flock. The good shepherd takes his sheep to safe waters that will nourish his sheep. He isn't behind us yelling go. He's ahead of us, bidding come. He's in the front, clearing the path, cutting the brush, sowing the way, leading us, telling us what we need to know when we need to know it. He doesn't just lead us to still waters. He is the still water. He is life-giving and thus soul restoring. When he leads us to still waters, he's leading us to himself, to the only thing that can fully restore us in this crazy, busy, draining world. Those still waters I want so bad from Psalms, that's him. That soul restoration I want, that's him. We've got to trust our shepherd. Over the next week, instead of complaining about how tired we are and constantly turning to other things for rest, let's try going to turn to Jesus more, to pray instead of making a third cup of coffee, to spend time in the Word before we pick up our novel, to stick close to the shepherd who leads us beside the still waters. And now we can take a more purposeful breath, wiggling the fingers and toes, maybe reaching those arms overhead like we would in the morning when we're trying to wake up, drawing those knees towards the chest, and bringing ourselves to a seated position.